Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers a mystery hidden in the damp stonework of the Rift. A story of betrayal that goes far deeper than a missing skeleton key or an emptied vault. We are drifting into the fog-shrouded alleyways of Riften, where the autumn leaves stick to the cobblestones like wet paper, and the canal water smells of secrets that refuse to drown. We are going to deconstruct the fall of the Thieves Guild, and in doing so, we might just find that the knife in the back didn't come from the hand everyone suspects. Let's be honest though, you probably wouldn't survive a casual trip to the Ratway without a full suit of enchanted Daedric plate and a very large, very potent bottle of cure disease, considering what's floating in that water. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is in your corner of the waking world. There is something comforting about knowing we're all sharing this quiet space across the time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Dragonborn stands at the precipice of the Rift, looking down at a city that seems to be actively sinking into the lake, much like the reputation of the organisation we're here to discuss. To understand the true villain of this story, the entity or force that truly hollowed out the Thieves Guild, we first have to look at the corpse. When you first arrive in Riften, then usually seeking Esbern or perhaps just looking to fence some stolen silverware, you're presented with a narrative that is neat, tidy and convenient. You're told that the guild has fallen on hard times, plagued by a supernatural string of bad luck that has decimated their numbers, ruined their heists, and turned them into the laughingstock of Skyrim's criminal underworld. Later, the script handed to you by the game points a decisive finger at Mercer Frey. He is the traitor. He is the defiler. He stole the skeleton key, offended the Daedric Prince Nocturnal, and brought a divine curse down upon the heads of his brothers and sisters. It is a compelling story, because it gives us a dragon to slay, metaphorically speaking. It gives us a singular point of failure to fix. Kill Mercer, return the key, profit. But what if that narrative is just a cover story? What if the rot in the Ragged Flagon started long before Mercer Frey ever cracked a lock he wasn't supposed to? Our first clue lies in the atmosphere of the headquarters itself. Think back to your first descent into the Ratway. You fight your way through the low-level thugs, the skeever-infested tunnels, and the damp, oppressive gloom until you reach the Ragged Flagon. It is less a headquarters and more a waiting room for the end of the world. The cistern, the supposed heart of this criminal empire, is a grand, echoing chamber, but it feels hollow. Here is a core in-game fact that every player encounters, but rarely questions deeply. The Thieves Guild of Skyrim is inextricably bound to the Ragged Flagon, a subterranean tavern located deep within the Ratway sewers of Riften. Unlike other guild halls like the Grand Jorvasker of the Companions or the Arcane Majesty of the College of Winterhold, the Thieves Guild lives in literal filth. They are not hiding in plain sight, they are hiding in the garbage. When you first walk in, there are barely a handful of members. You have Brynjolf, the smooth-talking recruiter, Vex, the infiltrator, Delvin Mallory, the fence, and Mercer Frey, the brooding leader. The game wants you to believe this emptiness is the result of the curse. But look closer at the infrastructure of their failure. The guild isn't just unlucky, it is structurally unsound. The bad luck they complain about manifests in ways that look suspiciously like incompetence and lack of maintenance. The training room is dusty, the beds are ragged, the vault, even before we know it's empty, looks like a stone box that hasn't seen a coin in years. This level of dilapidation suggests a timeline that stretches back decades, far longer than the relatively recent theft of the skeleton key. Mercer Frey is certainly an unpleasant individual. He's abrasive, paranoid, and clearly hiding something from the moment you meet him. But is he the architect of this ruin? Or is he just the vulture picking at a carcass that was already dead? Consider the recruitment process. When you arrive in the market, Brynjolf approaches you with a scheme that is frankly embarrassing for a master thief. His plan to frame Branché involves a distraction so transparent it borders on satire. He sells a Fulmer blood elixir, which, let's be real, is probably just beet juice and skooma, while you plant a ring. This is the grand strategy of the guild's second in command. It feels desperate, small time, and oddly public. A guild operating at the height of its power, or even a guild that was merely unlucky, would surely have more sophistication than a carnival trick in the town square. This brings us to a rather obscure lore tidbit that hints at the depth of the rot. If you dig into the dialogue options with Delvin Mallory and cross-reference them with the book Shadow Marks, which he authored, you realise that the guild's influence was once continental. However, there are subtle inconsistencies in how shadow marks are placed around Skyrim. In some cities, the marks are faded or placed on houses that have long since lost their value, implying that the guild's intelligence network failed a long time ago. The loot marks often lead to empty chests. The safe marks sometimes lead to danger. This suggests a breakdown in communication and hierarchy that a single traitor couldn't achieve overnight. It implies that the system of the guild has been broken for a generation. The members of the guild constantly bemoan their fate. It's the bad luck, they say. Everything goes wrong. But when you look at the jobs Vex and Delvin hand out, burglary, shakedowns, fishing jobs, they are high-risk, low-reward grinds. They are the kinds of jobs that get thieves caught regardless of luck. The leadership has stopped innovating. They have stopped protecting their own. They have retreated into the sewers to drink away their sorrows while the world above moves on. And fans have long debated the nature of the Thieves Guild in Skyrim compared to its predecessor in Cyrodiil. In Oblivion, the Thieves Guild under the Grey Fox was a crusade for the poor, a Robin Hood-esque organisation with strict rules against killing and a focus on stealing back from the corrupt. The Skyrim branch, however, is often criticised by the community as being little more than a Mafia protection racket. There is a prominent fan theory that suggests the Skyrim Guild was never actually a Thieves Guild in the spiritual sense, but rather a splinter group of thugs who co-opted the name. By this logic, Mercer Frey isn't a traitor to the Guild's ideals, because the Guild had no ideals to begin with. He was simply the most ruthless thug in a pit of thugs. But I think it goes deeper. I think the decay of the Ragged Flagon is the first major clue that the villain isn't a man, but a mindset. The Guild is suffering from a learned helplessness. They have become comfortable in the sewer. They have accepted their status as bottom feeders. When you look at the Flagon, with its leaking ceiling and its desperate patrons like Dirge, who threatens you with a name that sounds like a funeral march, you realise that Mercer Frey's theft of the treasury shouldn't have crippled them this badly. Think about it. A guild of master thieves loses its savings. What should they do? Go steal more. That is literally their job description. If a baker loses his flour, he buys more flour. If a warrior breaks his sword, he forges a new one. If a thief loses his gold, he acquires new gold. The fact that the guild simply stopped, that they sat down in the mud and cried curse instead of getting back to work, tells us that the treasury wasn't the only thing keeping them going. Their spirit was broken. Their agency was stripped away. Who benefits from a thieves guild that is too weak to pull off major heists, but strong enough to keep petty crime organised and contained? Who benefits from a guild that is terrified of its own shadow, paralysed by superstition, and confined to the sewers? Mercer Frey is a greedy man, yes. He wanted the eyes of the farmer, he wanted a life of luxury, but keeping the guild in a state of perpetually squalid purgatory doesn't serve Mercer. A thriving guild would arguably be better cover for his embezzlement. If the coffers were constantly being refilled by successful heists, then nobody would notice a few thousand septims missing here and there. By letting the guild rot, Mercer actually drew more attention to the empty vault. It was a tactical error that a genius criminal wouldn't make unless he was under pressure, or unless the decay was being orchestrated by someone else. The atmosphere in the Ratway is thick with this contradiction. You walk past the lowlife and the dampened spirits, apt names for the misery down there. The water dripping from the ceiling counts down the seconds of a dying organisation. The lighting is deliberate, it hides the grime, but it also hides the truth. The clues are there in the first hour of the quest line. The guild isn't suffering from a sudden betrayal, it is suffering from a long-term chronic illness. The bad luck excuse is a placebo they swallow to avoid facing the reality of their situation. They are being managed, they are being kept small, and as we peel back the layers of moss and stone, we have to ask ourselves, who holds the leash? It's easy to look at the guy with the glowing swords and the bad attitude and say, he did it. It's much harder to look at the political landscape of Riften and realise that the Thieves Guild fits perfectly into a puzzle that has nothing to do with Nocturnal and everything to do with control. Mercer Frey might be the knife, but he isn't the hand, and he certainly isn't the one who built the cage. As the Dragonborn stands in the centre of the cistern, looking at the empty desks and the suspicious lack of loot, the silence is deafening. This is not the silence of stealth. It is the silence of the grave, and the grave was dug long before Mercer Frey picked up a shovel. If we accept that the Thieves Guild is less of an independent criminal enterprise and more of a caged animal, we have to look at who holds the keys to the zoo. While Mercer Frey might be the one prowling around the cage, snapping his jaws and stealing the food, he isn't the one who built the bars. That honour belongs to the matriarch of misery herself, Maven Black-Briar. To find the true source of the guild's paralysis, you simply have to walk out of the Ratway, climb the stairs back to the surface, and enter the Bee and Barb. There she sits, usually on the ground floor, radiating an aura of untouchable arrogance that makes even the city guards walk a little wider around her table. Maven Black-Briar is not just a wealthy patron, she is the gravitational centre of Riften's corruption. And if you pay close attention to the power dynamic between her and the guild, you start to see a very disturbing picture. The Thieves Guild doesn't work with Maven, they work for her. Here is a core in-game fact that defines the early stages of the guild questline. The quest, Dampened Spirits. This is one of the first major operations you are tasked with, and it is revealing. Maven orders the guild to sabotage her only local competitor, the Honningbrew Meadery near Whiterun. You are sent not to steal a grand diamond or liberate an elder scroll, but to poison a vat of mead with vermin droppings to help a monopoly crush a small business. It is corporate espionage of the grimmiest variety. Think about what this means for the guild's identity. They aren't thieves in this scenario, they are hired thugs. They are enforcers for a mead cartel. The legendary Grey Fox of Cyrodiil would have likely robbed Maven blind for her hubris. But the Skyrim Guild? They bow and scrape and scurry off to poison a barrel because they are terrified of losing her patronage. This dependency is the real curse. Maven has effectively domesticated them. There is a compelling argument to be made that Maven Black-Briar is the one who engineered the guild's decline, or at least she maintains it. A strong independent Thieves Guild is a threat to a person like Maven. A guild that adheres to its own code, that has immense resources and political leverage, might one day decide that the Black-Briar estate is a juicy target. But a weak, desperate, superstitious guild? That is a useful tool. By keeping them starving, she ensures their loyalty. For they can't afford to bite the hand that feeds them, even if that hand is slowly choking the life out of them. This brings us to a fascinating, albeit dark, obscure lore tidbit found within the game's environment. If you break into the basement of Black-Briar Manor, something the guild seemingly never dares to do, you find something that chills the blood far more than a frost spider. Behind a master-locked door, surrounded by candles and human remains, is the Black Sacrament. Maven has performed the ritual to summon the Dark Brotherhood. We also find a letter to the Brotherhood complaining about their slow response time regarding a target. This detail is crucial. It proves that Maven has options. She doesn't need the Thieves Guild. She has a direct line to the most efficient assassins in Tamriel. This puts the Thieves Guild in an incredibly precarious position. They exist solely at her pleasure. If they fail her, or if they become too troublesome, she doesn't need to call the guards. She can just pay the Brotherhood to wipe them out. The guild leadership knows this. Mercer knows this. Brynjolf knows this. Their bad luck narrative is a convenient shield, but the reality is that they are operating under the constant threat of annihilation by their biggest client. So, when we look for the villain who ruined the guild, we have to look at the person who benefits most from their ruin. Maven benefits from a guild that is too weak to challenge her, but just strong enough to bully shopkeepers into paying protection money. Money that likely flows back into the economy she controls. It is a closed loop of corruption. The guild collects the coin, spends it on Black-Briar mead in the flagon, and fences goods that probably end up back in Maven's supply chain. Community discussions and fan theories often circle around the idea that Maven is the true Jarl of Riften, long before the Civil War questline resolves. Fans debate whether the Thieves Guild is essentially a subsidiary of the Black-Briar family business. Some even argue that the curse of Nocturnal is irrelevant compared to the economic stranglehold Maven exerts. If you look at the flow of gold, the guild is essentially a tax collection agency for the Black-Briars. They shake down the small merchants, Helga, Kirava, Bercy, driving them toward poverty, which makes them easier for Maven to buy out or control. Mercer Frey, for all his bluster and his magical sword, is remarkably submissive when it comes to Maven. He never suggests a heist against her. He never tries to leverage her secrets. He is the guild master, yet he acts like a middle manager terrified of a performance review. Why? Because Mercer is a pragmatist. He knows that the skeleton key can unlock physical doors, but it cannot unlock the political stranglehold Maven has on the rift. He's playing a game he cannot win, so he settles for skimming off the top while the ship goes down. In this light, Mercer isn't the one destroying the guild, he's just the guy looting the burning building. Maven is the arsonist who lit the match, or at least the one standing by with a bucket of gasoline ensuring the fire burns at just the right temperature to keep everyone warm but no one safe. The relationship is laid bare in the way she speaks to the Dragonborn. "I have the Jarl's ear," she says, "and the guard's in my pocket." It's not a boast, it's a statement of inventory. The Thieves Guild is just another item in that inventory, filed somewhere between reserve mead and paid thugs. And let's not forget the Civil War aspect. Whether Riften is held by the Stormcloaks or the Imperials, Maven remains in power. If the Empire takes the city, she is installed as Jarl officially. If the Stormcloaks hold it, she still runs the show from the shadows. The Guild's allegiance to her transcends the political conflict of the province. They are bound to her not by honour, but by the necessity of survival in an ecosystem she designed. The decay of the Ratway serves her aesthetic perfectly. If the Guild were housed in a palace, they would draw attention from the Thalmor or the Imperial Legion. By keeping them in the sewer, Maven keeps her weapon concealed. She keeps them hungry. A hungry dog hunts better than a well-fed one, provided you don't care about the dog's well-being. So, while we sharpen our pitchforks for Mercer Frey, let's acknowledge the silent partner in the room. The woman who turned a legendary Brotherhood of Shadows into a group of debt collectors and corporate saboteurs. Mercer might have stolen the eyes of a statue, but Maven stole the Guild's dignity. She stripped them of their independence and turned them into a line item on her ledger. As you stand there in the Bee and Barb, watching her swirl her drink, you realise that the truest villainy isn't always done with a dagger in the dark. Sometimes it's done with a heavy purse, a cold stare, and a monopoly on the local brew. The Guild is rotting from the inside out, yes, but the pressure crushing them from the outside is wearing a fine dress and wearing the face of Riften's unauthorised queen. Let's shift our gaze from the tangible corruption of the Black-Briars to the intangible spectre that supposedly haunts the Ragged Flagon, the Daedric Curse. It's the favourite bedtime story of the Thieves Guild, the catch-all excuse for every failed pickpocket attempt, every broken lockpick and every stubbed toe in the Ratway. It's the bad luck, they whisper. We offended Nocturnal. But tonight, we're going to pull that ghostly sheet off the furniture and see if there's actually anything underneath, or if it's just a pile of dust and convenient lies. The narrative hook of the questline relies heavily on this supernatural element. You're told repeatedly that ever since the skeleton key went missing, the Guild has been cursed. This is the core in-game fact we're asked to accept. Without the key in the Twilight Sepulcher, the conduit to the Lady of Shadows is broken, and thus luck has abandoned her children. It's a neat mystical explanation that fits perfectly into the high fantasy setting of the Elder Scrolls. Gods exist, they are petty, and if you steal their stuff, they punish you. Simple, right? But let's apply a little critical thinking, or perhaps just basic observation to this claim. Is the bad luck actually supernatural? Or is it simply the result of gaslighting and a staggering drop in competence? Consider the evidence of this so-called curse. What are the actual manifestations? Vex mentions that jobs go wrong. Delvin talks about people getting caught. But when you, the Dragonborn, join the Guild, you are tasked with restoring its glory. You go out on jobs, and guess what? If you are skilled, if your sneak is high, if you have muffled boots, if you know how to time a patrol route, the jobs go perfectly fine. The curse, curiously, seems to have zero effect on you. Now the faithful will argue, but you're the Dragonborn. You're a hero of destiny. Fair point. But let's look at the others. Vex is supposed to be the best infiltrator in the Guild, yet she spends all her time sitting at a table in the Flagon. Delvin, the master sneaker, never leaves his chair. The only members we see actually attempting to do anything are the hapless new recruits who get killed in the wild, or the ones who get caught by guards. Is it a divine curse that gets a novice thief caught when he tries to pickpocket a heavy armor warrior in broad daylight? Or is it just stupidity? There is an obscure lore tidbit that casts a massive shadow of doubt on the nature of Nocturnal's influence. If you read the book The Nightingales, Fact or Fiction, it discusses the skepticism surrounding the very existence of the Nightingales and their pact. But more importantly, if you delve into the broader lore of Nocturnal across the Elder Scrolls series, specifically looking at her portrayal in Oblivion and Elder Scrolls Online, Nocturnal is described as the Daedric Prince of Mystery, not necessarily luck in the gambling sense. Her sphere is the unknowable. While thieves pray to her for luck, there is no hard metaphysical rule stating she actively manages the day-to-day fortune of every cut purse in Tamriel. The idea that she would micromanage a guild's success rate based on a single artifact feels oddly bureaucratic for a Prince of the Void. This brings us to a fan theory that has circulated for years. The curse is a lie fabricated by the leadership, specifically Mercer, to cover their tracks. Think about it. If Mercer Frey is robbing the guild blind, emptying the vault of its treasures, he needs a cover story for why the guild is failing. He can't say, "Oh, we're broke because I stole it all." That would get him stabbed. So he leans into the superstition. We're broke because of the curse. The jobs are failing because of the curse. It's not my fault, it's the angry goddess. It is the perfect alibi. It shifts the blame from human error and corruption to an untouchable divine force. You can't interrogate a Daedric prince. You can't audit a curse. It creates a culture of helplessness where failure is expected and accepted. Oh well. The curse got me again. It stops people from asking the hard questions like, why did Mercer buy a lavish estate in the city while we sleep in sewage? Or, why hasn't the guildmaster planned a major heist in 10 years? The psychology of the guild supports this. They are defeated before they even start. They have internalized the idea that they are victims of a cosmic injustice. This is Gaslighting 101. Mercer Frey, the man who actually knows the truth about the key, since he has it, uses the myth of its loss to keep his subordinates in line. He weaponizes their faith against them. Furthermore, look at the timeline. Mercer has had the skeleton key for years. In that time, he has presumably been using it to unlock doors and gain wealth for himself. If the key is the source of luck, shouldn't Mercer be the luckiest man in Skyrim? And yet his paranoia is consuming him. He is isolated, friendless, and ultimately gets tracked down and killed by the very people he duped. The key didn't give him luck in the sense of a happy ending. It just gave him access. This suggests the artifact is a tool, not a luck dispenser. The luck the guild talks about is likely just a metaphor for competence and information. The skeleton key unlocks barriers, both physical and metaphorical. It unlocks human potential, as we will explore later. Without it, the guild lost its edge not because of magic, but because they lost the ultimate tool of the trade. But losing a tool doesn't curse you, it just makes the job harder. The fact that they collapsed so completely suggests they were over-reliant on shortcuts to begin with. Let's compare this to the Dark Brotherhood. When they abandon the 5 tenets, they crumble. But that is because they abandoned their rules, their structure. The Thieves Guild didn't abandon their rules, they just lost a magic lockpick. The collapse feels disproportionate to the cause, unless the cause is simply a cover for the systemic looting and sabotage we discussed in the previous section. So, when Brynjolf looks you in the eye and tells you about the run of bad luck, remember, he is a man who sells fake medicine to gullible villagers. He is a con artist. It is entirely possible he believes the lie, or it is possible he is just repeating the company line because it's easier than admitting his boss is a crook. The Daedric Curse is the smoke in the room. It obscures the vision. It keeps the members looking up at the sky, wondering what they did to offend the gods. Instead of looking across the table at the man counting their gold, it effectively neutralizes any internal rebellion. Who would you rebel against? You can't mutiny against bad luck, you just endure it. This convenient superstition is the glue holding the broken guild together. It binds them in shared misery, it validates their failure. And for Mercer Frey, it was the greatest heist he ever pulled. He didn't just steal the gold, he stole their accountability. He stole their ability to blame him. As you stand in the Twilight Sepulcher later in the quest, listening to the ghosts of the past, ask yourself, is the air heavy with divine judgment? Or is it just stale air in an old tomb? The curse might be real in the sense that believing in it makes it real, a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. But as for a Daedric prince actively tripping thieves in the marketplace, that sounds like a story invented by a man with a very guilty conscience and a very heavy coin purse. If Maven Black-Briar is the jailer and Mercer Frey is the rat stealing the cheese, then Karliah is the one who convinces you that the only way to escape the cage is to walk directly into the slaughterhouse. Of all the characters in this sordid drama, Karliah is the most deceptive because she presents herself as the antidote to the poison. She is the exiled heroine, the wronged woman, the keeper of the true faith. When she pulls that arrow out of your chest in Snowvale Sanctum and tells you her sob story, you want to believe her, you want to help her. But if we strip away the violins and the tragic backstory, we find a master manipulator who is effectively grooming the Dragonborn for a spiritual sacrifice. Karliah's introduction is built on a foundation of trauma bonding. She shoots you, poisoning you, rendering you helpless, and then claims she saved your life. It is a classic psychological power move. Break the subject down, then offer the only hand up. From that moment on, she controls the narrative. She feeds you the history of Gallus, the betrayal of Mercer, and the plight of the Nightingales. And while her facts regarding Mercer's treachery are true, her solution to the problem is where the manipulation begins. Here is the core in-game fact that drives the second half of the questline. Karliah insists with absolute conviction that Mercer Frey cannot be defeated by mortal means alone. She tells you and Brynjolf that because Mercer possesses the skeleton key, he's practically invincible. To stand a chance against him, she argues, you must travel to the Twilight Sepulcher, don the armour of the Nightingales, and swear an oath to Nocturnal. The game presents this as a non-negotiable plot point. If you want to finish the quest, you have to agree. But pause for a moment and look at who she's talking to. By the time the Dragonborn reaches this point in the game, they have likely slain dragons, dismantled vampire covens, and shouted Dwemer centurions into scrap metal. The idea that a single thief, even a skilled one with a magic lockpick, is an insurmountable threat to a demigod hero is laughable. Mercer is a Breton with a glass sword and an invisibility potion. He isn't Alduin, he isn't Mirac, he's just a guy. This is where the fan community has raised eyebrows for over a decade. The overkill theory suggests that Karliah is lying about Mercer's invincibility to trick you into the oath. She doesn't need the Dragonborn to kill Mercer. She needs the Dragonborn to fill a vacancy. She sees a powerful asset, a thief capable of infiltrating Goldenglow and wrecking the East Empire Company, and decides to conscript that asset for her deity. She uses Mercer as the bogeyman to scare you into signing a contract you don't understand. Karliah is a fanatic. To her, the Nightingales aren't just an elite circle of the Thieves Guild, they're a religious order. She speaks of Nocturnal not as a business partner, but as a mother figure. Her devotion is absolute, and like all zealots, she cannot conceive of a world where others don't share her faith. She assumes that of course you would want to sell your soul to the Lady of Shadows. Why wouldn't you? It's the highest honour. This fanaticism might be in her blood. An obscure lore tidbit that adds depth to her character is her lineage. Karliah is the granddaughter of Queen Baranzea. Yes, that Baranzea, the one from the biography The Real Baranzea. The uncensored version creates quite the scandal. You can see the heritage in Karliah's eyes. They're a striking violet, a trait rare among Dunmer and often associated with the royal line or significant magical potential. Baranzea was a survivor, a manipulator, and a woman who navigated the treacherous courts of Tamriel with ruthless efficiency. Karliah has that same aristocratic steel. She isn't a gutter rat like Dirge or a thug like Maul. She is royalty in exile. She frames the conflict not as a turf war, but as a Shakespearean tragedy of high stakes and divine retribution. She uses this gravitas to steamroll Brynjolf. Poor Brynjolf, he is a salesman, a con artist, but he is out of his depth when it comes to ancient curses and Daedric pacts. You can see him hesitating during the conversation at the Standing Stones. He asks, "What are you asking of us, lass?" He sounds wary, but Karliah shuts down his critical thinking with urgency. There is no time, she claims. Mercer is getting away. She creates a false time constraint to force a decision. This is a classic sales tactic, the limited time offer. Act now or the villain wins. Sign the lease on your soul or the bad luck continues. She selectively omits the full weight of what the Nightingale Oath entails until you are literally standing at the gate. She drips the information slowly. First, it's just, we need her blessing. Then, it's, we need to become Nightingales. Only later does the reality of the eternal nature of the service become clear. By then, you're already wearing the armour. You're already emotionally invested in taking Mercer down. She relies on the sunk cost fallacy. You've come this far. Are you really going to turn back now because of a little thing like eternal servitude? Karliah's narrative frames the Dragonborn as a specific piece of a prophecy, or at least a necessary cog in the machine. She essentially drafts you. There is no vote. There is no guild meeting where the members decide, hey, should we send the new guy to pledge his soul to a Daedric prince? Karliah decides. She decides for Brynjolf, and she decides for you. She effectively stages a coup of the guild's spiritual direction. Furthermore, look at how she handles the skeleton key. She treats it with a reverence that borders on obsession. To her, the theft of the key is a personal violation, a sacrilege. She doesn't care about the gold Mercer stole from the vault. She cares that he defiled the sepulchre. Her priorities are completely misaligned with the rest of the guild. The rank-and-file thieves want their coin flow back. They want the guards off their backs. Karliah wants theological purity. She's dragging a group of secular criminals into a holy war they didn't sign up for. The Dragonborn becomes her instrument. She grooms you by flattering your skills, calling you a true thief, and validating your worthiness. But it's a predatory form of flattery. She is sizing you up for the uniform. She needs a third Nightingale to complete the Trinity. That is her goal. Killing Mercer is just the prerequisite for restoring the Trinity. If Mercer had died of a heart attack 5 years ago, she would still be looking for someone to fill that third spot. You just happen to be the convenient solution to both her problems. It is also worth noting that Karliah has been hiding in the shadows for decades, allegedly preparing. Yet she failed to stop Mercer on her own. She failed to expose him earlier. Her sudden reappearance coincides with your arrival. Did she wait for a hero to use as a battering ram? It certainly feels that way. She sends you into the line of fire repeatedly, while she provides support from the shadows. She's the quest giver, not the companion. She directs the action, keeping her own hands relatively clean of the wet work until the final confrontation. So, when we ask who the real villain is, we have to look at the person who sells the guild into slavery. Mercer Frey stole their past, the gold, but Karliah steals their future, their souls. She binds the guild's leadership to a Daedric prince forever. She ensures that the cycle of servitude continues. She frames it as liberation. We are taking the guild back. But in reality, she is just changing management. The guild goes from being Mercer's piggy bank to being Nocturnal's farm. Karliah is a tragic figure, certainly. She lost her lover, Gallus. She lost her reputation. But trauma does not excuse the manipulation of others. She's so blinded by her need for redemption and revenge that she doesn't hesitate to sacrifice the Dragonborn's autonomy to get it. She doesn't ask, she tells, she doesn't offer, she commands. As you follow her toward the Nightingale Hall, notice how she walks. Head high, confident, leading the way, she has won. She has secured 2 new souls for her mistress. Mercer Frey is a dead man walking, and she knows it. But the victory she is leading you toward is a Pyrrhic one. The fanatic in her has overridden the thief. A thief takes what they need and leaves. A fanatic takes everything you are and demands you say thank you. The deception is elegant. It is wrapped in the guise of destiny and duty. But strip it down, and it is a recruitment drive for a cult. Karliah is the charismatic leader standing at the altar, handing you the cup and telling you that drinking the poison is the only way to be saved. And because we want that cool armor and the end of the questline, we drink it. We swallow the lie that we had no choice. But the choice was taken from us the moment those violet eyes decided we were useful. So, we have the desperate organization, the corporate overlord, the convenient ghost story, and the charismatic recruiter. Now, we arrive at the contract signing, the moment where the ink hits the parchment, or in this case, where the Dragonborn stands on a stone circle and verbally agrees to a metaphysical terms and conditions agreement that is, quite frankly, the worst trade deal in the history of Tamriel. We're talking about the Nightingale Oath. Karliah herds you and Brynjolf into the Nightingale Hall, a place that smells of ancient dust and questionable life choices. You are given a set of armour, which, let's be honest, is arguably the best-looking light armour in the game, giving you that sleek Batman of the medieval era vibe, and told to stand on a specific spot. It feels ceremonial, weighty, and significant. But if you stop looking at the cape physics and start listening to the words coming out of Karliah's mouth, the red flags start popping up faster than courier notifications. Here is the core in-game fact that seals your fate. The Oath of the Nightingales is not a job contract. It is a lien on your soul. The specific terms state that you are to serve Nocturnal as a guardian of the Twilight Sepulcher in life, and, here is the kicker, continue that service in death until Nocturnal feels your contract is fulfilled. Upon our death, we become the guardians of the Sepulcher, serving as agents of the Mistress of Shadows until such time as she sees fit to release us. Until such time as she sees fit. That is legal speak for forever, or until I get bored of you. In the context of Daedric princes, who perceive time differently than mortals. That could be eons. You are agreeing to become a ghost. You are agreeing to become one of those spectral sentinels you fight in other dungeons, mindlessly pacing a corridor, attacking intruders, stripped of your personality and agency. And for what? Let's look at the compensation package. In exchange for eternal servitude and the forfeiture of your afterlife, Sovngarde, you get a suit of armour, a sword, and one of 3 daily powers that, while useful, are hardly game-breaking. You get an invisibility cloak, Shadow Cloak of Nocturnal, a frenzy spell, Nightingale Subterfuge, or a health drain, Nightingale Strife. These are effects you can replicate with high-level illusion magic or decent alchemy. You're selling your immortal soul for the magical equivalent of a mid-tier spell tome. Brynjolf, bless his heart, doesn't even read the fine print. He just nods along. Aye, lass, sounds good. He's so desperate to fix the guild's cash flow problem that he signs away his eternity without a second thought. It highlights just how deep the desperation goes. But you, the Dragonborn, usually have more agency, yet the game railroads you here. You cannot say, I'll help kill Mercer, but I'm keeping my soul, thanks. The narrative forces you to accept that the only way to beat a thief with a lockpick is to become a slave to a shadow. This brings us to a contentious fan theory and community debate that has raged on forums since 2011, the war for the Dragonborn's soul. By the time you reach this quest, you might have already pledged your soul to Hircine, via lycanthropy, to Sithis, via the Dark Brotherhood, and you are technically claimed by Akatosh by virtue of being Dragonborn. So who gets the prize when you die? The common consensus, or perhaps the desperate hope of players, is that Akatosh has dibs, because your soul is fundamentally a dragon soul. Therefore the Nightingale Oath is null and void because Nocturnal can't claim what already belongs to the Time Dragon. However, other law scholars argue that Daedric pacts are binding contracts. If you willingly sign the paper, Akatosh might not intervene. The idea that the Dragonborn is writing checks their soul can't cash is a source of anxiety for many roleplayers. Are we scamming Nocturnal? Or is she the one scamming us, knowing that she might only get a fragment of our power? Regardless of the theological logistics, the intent of the oath is predatory. It takes advantage of a crisis to secure labour. Karliah frames it as a business arrangement, but business arrangements have exit clauses. Business arrangements have retirement plans. This is indentured servitude disguised as a knighthood. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the Pilgrim's Path and other religious texts regarding the Evergloam, Nocturnal's plane of oblivion. Unlike the Shivering Isles, which are manic and colourful, or Apocrypha, which is filled with forbidden knowledge, the Evergloam is described as a realm of perpetual twilight and shifting shadows. It is a place where individual identity erodes. To become a part of the Evergloam is to essentially dissolve into the background noise of the universe. The Sentinels we meet later in the Twilight Sepulcher, the ghosts of former Nightingales, barely remember who they were. They are husks. They are batteries powering the shrine. When you agree to the oath, you aren't joining an elite club. You're agreeing to become part of the architecture. You're agreeing to become the drywall in Nocturnal's basement. This reframes the entire concept of the villain. If the Thieves Guild exists to funnel wealth to its members, the Nightingale Trinity exists to funnel members to Nocturnal. It is a parasitic relationship. The Daedric Prince feeds on the devotion and the eventual souls of the guild's best and brightest. She doesn't want the gold, she wants the talent. She wants Gallus, she wants Karliah, she wants Brynjolf, and she definitely wants the Dragonborn. The fine print also reveals a disturbing lack of reciprocity. Nocturnal demands the skeleton key be returned. She demands the Ebonmere be reopened. She demands 3 souls to guard it. What does she actually do for the guild in return? She provides luck. As we discussed earlier, this luck is nebulous at best. It's the placebo effect. I picked this lock because Nocturnal smiled on me, says the thief who has practiced picking locks for 20 years. It discounts human skill and attributes success to the divine patron, reinforcing the dependency. It's the classic abusive relationship dynamic. You are nothing without me, the prince whispers. You are unlucky without me. You will fail without me. And the guild believes it. They believe it so hard they are willing to stand in a damp cave and say, "Take me, use me, for keep me forever." The ceremony itself is designed to overwhelm critical thought. The mystical lights, the echoing voices, the solemnity of Karliah, it's theatre. It's designed to make you feel like you're part of something bigger, something noble. Nightingale sounds romantic. It sounds better than sewer rat. But a rat in a cape is still a rat, and a slave in cool armour is still a slave. Furthermore, look at the strictness of the conditions. You must protect the Twilight Sepulcher. From what? Usually from other thieves. The Nightingales are essentially thieves hired to stop other thieves. It's an ironic loop. Nocturnal is the patron of thieves, yet she employs the best thieves to prevent theft from her own temple. She hoards her treasures while encouraging others to steal from mortals. It's the ultimate hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. Mercer Frey, for all his faults, likely read this fine print. He looked at the deal, eternal guarding duty, no freedom, serving a capricious shadow deity, and said, "No thanks." He saw the trap. His rebellion, which is framed as the ultimate betrayal, might have started as a simple refusal to be exploited. He broke the oath because the oath was broken to begin with. It was unfair. As you stand there, and the game prompts you to say, "I am ready," there is a heaviness in the air. It's not the weight of responsibility, it's the weight of the chains snapping shut. Brynjolf walks out feeling like a hero. Karliah walks out feeling vindicated. The Dragonborn walks out, well, that depends on you, but if you're paying attention, you walk out realizing that you've just been duped by the oldest trick in the book, the high-pressure timeshare sales pitch from hell. You have the armor now, you have the title, but the cost is hidden in the silence of the grave that awaits you. The villain here isn't a person, it's the contract. It's the system that demands total submission for a sliver of success. And the ink on that contract is blood. Your blood, metaphorically and perhaps eventually literally. So the next time you trigger that Nightingale power and turn invisible, remember the price. You aren't just bending the light, you are borrowing power from a landlord who never refunds the deposit, and the lease is for eternity. If the Nightingale Oath is the contract that sold the guild into servitude, then Gallus Desidenius was the man who drafted the legal language, polished the pen, and assured everyone that signing away their afterlife was a sound investment strategy. In the black and white morality play presented by Karliah, Gallus is the saint, the fallen martyr, the benevolent leader, the philosopher thief who was brutally murdered by the jealous and greedy Mercer Frey. He is the guild's equivalent of a canonized saint, his memory invoked to shame the living into compliance. But history, as we know, is written by the survivors, and in this case, the history of Gallus is being narrated by his grieving lover, who is also a religious zealot. To find the truth about Gallus, we have to look past the tragic romance and examine the man's actual legacy. Was he really the paragon of virtue the guild believes him to be? Or was he a co-conspirator in the spiritual hollowing of the organisation? Was he a leader, or was he a cultist who happened to run a crime syndicate on the side? Let's look at the primary artefact he left behind, the Journal of Gallus Desidenius. This is the core in-game fact that drives the investigation. You find his remains in Snowvale Sanctum, a Nordic ruin filled with Draugr and lethal traps. On his body is a journal written in a cipher so complex that only a handful of people in Tamriel can read it. When it is finally decoded by Enthir in Winterhold, it reveals that Gallus had suspected Mercer of embezzlement for months, perhaps years. He had been watching, gathering evidence, and preparing to confront his friend. This sounds noble, but pause for a second. If you are the guildmaster, and you suspect your second-in-command is stealing from the treasury, do you write a cryptic diary about it? Do you play a game of cat and mouse, or do you handle it? Gallus's hesitation, his need to turn a simple purge of a traitor into a grand mystery, speaks volumes about his character. He was a man obsessed with shadows, with layers, with complexity. He wasn't a pragmatic leader, he was a scholar of the obscure. While he was busy encrypting his thoughts, Mercer was busy emptying the vaults. Gallus's intellectual vanity allowed the rot to fester, but the more damning evidence lies in his philosophy. Gallus wasn't just a thief, he was a true believer in the Nightingale Trinity. He bought into the Guardian rhetoric completely. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the text of the Nightingales, a book often attributed to an anonymous author, but widely believed to be penned by Gallus or transcribed from his teachings. The text speaks of the bond with Nocturnal not as a transaction, but as a sublime surrender. It romanticizes the loss of self. It frames the Evergloam not as a prison, but as a sea of endless shadow where one finds peace. This suggests that Gallus was actively recruiting for Nocturnal. He wasn't just maintaining a tradition, he was a missionary. He groomed Karliah, he groomed Mercer. He tried to turn the leadership of a criminal organization into a monastic order. Is it any wonder that a man like Mercer Frey, who was grounded, material, and undeniably greedy, eventually snapped? Imagine trying to run a business where the CEO keeps talking about becoming one with the shadows while you're trying to make payroll. Gallus represents the transition of the guild from a practical enterprise to a mystical cult. Before the modern era of the guild, the organization was likely looser, more focused on the coin. Gallus tightened the leash, tying the guild's identity to the sepulchre. He made the success of the guild dependent on the favour of a Daedric prince. By doing so, he introduced a systemic vulnerability. If the link to the prince is broken, like say by a stolen key, the organisation collapses because it has forgotten how to function without its spiritual crutch. Gallus built a house of cards on a foundation of faith, and when Mercer pulled the card, the whole thing fell down. There is a growing fan theory that Gallus was actually the most dangerous kind of villain, the pious fool. This theory posits that Gallus knew exactly what the oath entailed, the eternal slavery, the loss of identity, and he didn't care. In fact, he desired it. He was a nihilist who viewed the physical world as a distraction and the Evergloam as the ultimate reality. If this is true, then by inducting others into the Nightingales, he wasn't bestowing an honour, he was dragging them into his own suicide pact. He was condemning his friends to the same fate he craved, regardless of whether they truly understood the metaphysical cost. Look at his relationship with Mercer. Gallus and Mercer were close. They were partners. Gallus mentored him. If Mercer turned out to be a sociopath, what does that say about his teacher? Did Gallus ignore the warning signs because Mercer was a skilled thief? Or did Gallus actually encourage Mercer's ruthlessness, only to have it turn back on him? It is a classic Frankenstein scenario. The monster didn't appear out of thin air. It was built in the lab of Gallus's leadership. When you speak to the ghost of Gallus in the Twilight Sepulcher at the end of the questline, listen to his voice. He isn't angry, he isn't vengeful, he sounds relieved. He says, "My watch begins." He is happy to be a ghost. He's happy to fade into the wall. This confirms his fanatical devotion. He has achieved his life's goal, to stop being a person and start being a resource for Nocturnal. But consider the collateral damage of his ascension. He left Karliah behind to carry the burden of his memory for 25 years. He left the guild in the hands of the man he knew was corrupt. His martyrdom wasn't a noble sacrifice to save the guild. It was the result of a failed confrontation that he mismanaged. He died because he underestimated the man he raised, and he died with the secrets of the guild locked in a diary that no one could read. That isn't heroism, it's negligence. The golden age of the guild that everyone pines for, the era of Gallus, was likely just the era before the bill came due. The guild was functioning on the borrowed time of the Nightingale Oath. They were enjoying the luck of Nocturnal without paying the price. Gallus was the one signing the credit card receipts, smiling and saying, "Don't worry, we'll pay it back later." Well, later arrived, and the payment was the utter ruin of the organisation. Furthermore, Gallus's obsession with the Fulmer eyes is telling. He discovered them, he knew where they were, but he didn't take them. Why? Was it out of respect for the Fulmer? Unlikely. Was it because they were too hard to get? He was a master thief. Nothing is too hard to get. It's more likely he viewed them as profane wealth, a distraction from the sacred duty of the sepulchre. He imposed his own ascetic values on the guild. He withheld the location of a fortune that could have set the guild up for life because it didn't fit his spiritual aesthetic. Mercer, the pragmatist, saw a fortune being wasted and decided to cash it in. In a twisted way, Mercer was doing what a thief is supposed to do: steal the shiny thing. Gallus was the one acting against the nature of the profession, so when we count the villains of the story, we have to include the man who set the trap. Gallus Desidenius might have been a kind lover and a skilled shadowfoot, but as a leader he was a disaster. He prioritised his cult over his crew, he prioritised the afterlife over the present, and he bound the guild to a contract that made them vulnerable to the whims of a Daedric prince. He is the architect of the cage. Mercer just rattled the bars, Karliah just polishes the lock. But Gallus is the one who poured the concrete foundation, smiling the whole time, convinced he was building a cathedral when he was actually building a tomb. His ghost haunts the sepulchre not because he has unfinished business, but because he is exactly where he always wanted to be, enslaved by the darkness he worshipped, and he took everyone down with him. So we have established that the guild is a crumbling institution. Its leaders are either corporate shills, cultists, or ghosts, and the contracts are rigged. Now let's turn our attention to the physical object at the centre of this storm, the skeleton key. On the surface, it's the ultimate thief's tool, an unbreakable lockpick that opens any door. It is the holy grail of burglary. But if we listen closely to what the game tells us, and more importantly, what Mercer Frey shows us, the key is something far more dangerous. It isn't just a tool for opening chests, it is a tool for unlocking the constraints of reality itself. And the fact that Nocturnal wants it back so badly suggests that she isn't interested in maintaining balance, she is interested in maintaining our limitations. That here is the core in-game fact that changes everything. When you finally confront Mercer Frey in the sanctuary beneath the great statue of Yrgthand, he doesn't just use the key to open a door, he uses it to bring down the roof. He explicitly tells you the key isn't just a lockpick, it unlocks the potential of the wielder. He claims to have used it to unlock doors in his own mind, granting him abilities that border on the supernatural. He can turn invisible at will, not through a spell, but by unlocking the ability to not be seen. He can manipulate the structural integrity of the room. He has essentially hacked the physics engine of Nirn. This revelation recontextualizes the entire quest. Until this point, you are led to believe the key is just a symbolic artifact that acts as a conduit for luck. Karliah tells you it must be returned to the Ebonmere to keep the channel open. But Mercer's usage proves that the key's power is active, tangible, and immense when it is removed from the sepulchre. When it sits in the Ebonmere, it does nothing. It is a battery plugged into a wall that powers nothing. It just keeps the lights on in a tomb. But in the hands of a mortal, it is a tool of transcendence. This leads us to a fascinating, obscure lore tidbit derived from the wider metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls. The skeleton key has appeared in almost every main game, and its function is always to open that which is closed. However, it has deep lore discussions, often referencing the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes or the nature of liminal barriers, suggest that locks in the Elder Scrolls universe are not just physical tumblers. Concepts like mortality, ignorance, and physical limitation are also viewed as barriers or locks placed upon the soul. If the skeleton key can truly unlock anything, then theoretically it can unlock the divine spark within a mortal. It could unlock the secrets of CHIM, the state of realizing you are in a dream and becoming a lucid dreamer/god. Mercer Frey was scratching the surface of this. He wasn't just a thief anymore, he was becoming something else. He was evolving, and that is terrifying to a Daedric prince. The princes thrive on the disparity between their power and mortal weakness. If mortals can just unlock godhood with a stolen artifact, the hierarchy of the cosmos collapses. This brings us to one of the most prevalent community debates and gameplay strategies in Skyrim, the refusal to return the key. I would wager that a significant percentage of you listening right now, perhaps the majority, have a save file where the Thieves Guild questline is permanently stalled at Darkness Returns. You have the key, you use it. It's the best item in the game. It makes the lockpicking skill tree irrelevant. Why would you ever give it back? The game narrative treats this as a failure to complete the story, but functionally, keeping the key makes you the ultimate master thief. Players intuitively understand what the narrative tries to hide. The key is better in your hands than in Nocturnal's. The reward for returning the key, one of 3 minor powers, is vastly inferior to the key itself. This gameplay dissonance creates a meta-narrative where the correct choice for the player is to defy the goddess and keep the power. So, is the skeleton key's true purpose to sit in a shrine? Or is that just a lie Nocturnal tells to keep it out of circulation? Think about the symbolism. A key is meant to be used. A key that stays in the lock forever isn't a key, it's a deadbolt. By demanding the key be returned to the Ebonmere, Nocturnal is effectively locking the door to human potential. She is hoarding the mechanism of liberation. She demands that the key be used only to open the gate to her realm, a gate that lets her influence out, rather than letting mortals use it to let themselves into higher states of being. Well, Mercer Frey discovered this. "I've learned that the key can do so much more," he says. He realised that the guild's obsession with luck was small-minded. Why pray for luck when you can guarantee success? Why hope a guard doesn't see you when you can unlock the concept of invisibility? Mercer's ambition, while selfish, was fundamentally about breaking rules. He was hacking the system. In this light, the Dragonborn is sent as an enforcer of the status quo. You are the cosmic janitor sent to clean up the mess and put the dangerous toy back in the box. Karliah and Brynjolf are the hall monitors ensuring you do it. They don't understand the key's power. They only understand the dogma. It belongs to the lady. They're afraid of the freedom the key represents. They prefer the safety of the cage, a brawl where the rules are clear and the hierarchy is fixed. The villain here is the suppression of knowledge. The skeleton key represents a shortcut to power that doesn't require Daedric pacts or years of study. It is a technological object, magically speaking, that bypasses the gatekeepers. Nocturnal, as the Prince of Night and Darkness, naturally wants to keep things hidden. She wants mysteries to remain unsolved. The key is the ultimate solution to every mystery. It is the antithesis of her nature, which is why she guards it so jealously. She doesn't want it used. She wants it contained. Consider the puzzles in the Twilight Sepulcher as you go to return it. You walk through the shadows, avoiding the light. It is a test of submission. You're being trained to fear the light, to stick to the darkness. The final act of the quest is to insert the key into the Ebonmere. The moment you do, the key disappears. It is gone from your inventory. The screen flashes. You get a pat on the head and a good job. But you have lost the most powerful artifact in your possession. You have disarmed yourself. The narrative frames this as restoring balance. But whose balance? It restores the balance of power where Daedric princes hold all the cards and mortals beg for scraps. By returning the key, you are reinforcing the glass ceiling of Mundus. You're agreeing that mortals shouldn't have access to the source code of reality. Mercer Frey was a villain because he killed Gallus and stole gold, yes. But his crime against the natural order was that he dared to use the key for its intended purpose, opening doors that were supposed to stay shut. He was an Icarus figure flying too close to the sun or into the void with stolen wings. And like Icarus, he had to be swatted down, not because he was evil, but because he was unauthorized. The curse of the guild wasn't bad luck. It was the withdrawal symptoms of an organization that had lost its potential. But instead of learning to thrive without the drug, or fighting to reclaim the power for themselves, they begged for the dealer to take it back. They chose dependency over sovereignty. When you look at the skeleton key in your inventory, turning it over in your hands, admiring its design, remember that it is a promise. It promises a world where no door is closed to you, no chest is locked, no secret is safe. Returning it is an act of profound surrender. It is the moment the Dragonborn decides to be a servant rather than a master. And let's be real for a second. How many of you kept that key until you hit level 100 in lockpicking? Or until you finished every other dungeon in Skyrim? We all did. Because deep down, we know the truth. The key belongs to the one who can hold it. The crime isn't stealing it. The crime is giving it back to a goddess who only uses it to lock us out of our own potential. The skeleton key is the ultimate red pill, and the questline is just the game trying to force-feed us the blue one. And who was the one man who choked down that red pill dry, without a glass of water? Mercer Frey. It is time we stop looking at Mercer through the lens Karliah gave us, as a petty, jealous backstabber, and start looking at him for what he actually was, the only sane man in an asylum run by ghosts. If we accept the premise that the Nightingale Oath is a trap, and the Thieves Guild had become a cult of personality centred around a Daedric vampire bat, then Mercer's actions take on a completely different hue. He wasn't just a traitor, he was a defector. He was a man trying to chew his leg off to get out of a bear trap. To understand Mercer's rebellion, we have to look at the moment the glass shattered for him. He was a Nightingale, he served Nocturnal. He likely believed the hype initially, but somewhere along the line, he looked at the terms of service and realised he had been scammed. He saw Gallus, his mentor, his friend, sinking deeper into the mysticism of the Twilight Sepulcher, prioritising the worship of shadows over the accumulation of wealth. Mercer, a thief at his core, likely asked the fundamental question, "What is in it for me?" And the answer was, nothing. You serve until you die, and then you serve forever. Here is a core in-game fact that defines the climax of his arc. In the flooded sanctuary of Erkenthand, as the water rises and the statue of the snow elf crumbles, Mercer mocks the very concept of the Nightingales. Gallus was a fool, he sneers. He thought he could use the guild to serve his own ends. Mercer accuses Gallus of the very thing Karliah accuses Mercer of, using the guild. But Mercer's rejection of the rules is absolute. He doesn't just break the oath, he spits on it. He tells you that the principled thief is a myth, a shackle designed to keep the talented poor. Mercer Frey is the ultimate individualist. In a world of gods, demons, and destiny, he decided to bet on himself. He looked at the skeleton key, this artifact of cosmic potential, and decided that it was wasted on a door that leads to nowhere. Why should the key sit in the Ebonmere doing nothing when it could be in his pocket, making him a god? His theft of the key was an act of Promethean defiance. He stole fire from the gods because he was cold, and he didn't care if the rest of the world burned for it. There is a compelling, if somewhat dark, interpretation found in community debates regarding the atheism of Mercer Frey. In a world where gods are demonstrably real, you can literally talk to them. Atheism isn't about disbelief, it's about refusal. It's the mesotheism, or hatred of the gods. Fans argue that Mercer is one of the few characters in Skyrim who actively refuses to play the role assigned to him by higher powers. He rejects the Dragonborn's destiny, he rejects Nocturnal's claim, and he rejects the guild's tradition. He is trying to carve out a space where he is the only authority. This perspective is supported by an obscure lore tidbit concerning the Sigic endeavour and the philosophy of the Dwemer. The Dwemer dwarves disappeared because they tried to refute the existence of the gods, or at least create their own divinity through logic and tone. Mercer is surrounded by Dwemer ruins. He dies in a Dwemer sanctuary. His dialogue echoes their nihilistic arrogance. He speaks of unlocking possibilities. It is entirely possible that Mercer, through his study of the key and his time in these ruins, began to adopt a Dwemer-like philosophy. The gods are just powerful tyrants, and the only way to be free is to surpass them. When he stabs Gallus, it isn't just a murder, it's an ideological purge. He is killing the priest to free the thief. He sees Gallus as the chain binding the guild to the sepulchre. By removing him, Mercer likely hoped to steer the guild back to a secular, profit-driven enterprise. But he underestimated the inertia of tradition. He couldn't kill the idea of the Nightingales, so he had to hide it. He had to live a double life, pretending to mourn the man he killed, pretending to serve the guild he loathed, all while secretly using the key to build his own escape pod. The Eyes of the Falmer are the final piece of his retirement plan. These massive gems are purely material. They have no magical curse, that we know of, no Daedric strings attached. They are just money. Huge, life-changing money. Mercer's obsession with them is the obsession of a man who wants to buy his way out of the game. He isn't trying to rule the world, he's trying to leave it. He wants to disappear, to go somewhere where neither the guild nor Nocturnal can find him. The tragedy of Mercer Frey is that he is a man running for the exit in a building that has no doors. Let's be honest though, fighting him in Erkenthand is a nightmare. The water is rising, he's turning invisible, he's draining your health, and the camera angles in that room are the real enemy. It's a chaotic, desperate struggle, but look at it from his perspective. He is cornered. The heroes have arrived to drag him back to the spiritual prison he spent decades trying to escape. He isn't fighting for the gold anymore. He is fighting for his soul. If he dies, he knows what awaits him. He knows Nocturnal is waiting. The sheer panic underlying his arrogance makes him a deeply human villain. Mercer is the rebel because he refuses to accept the narrative of fate. The Dragonborn is a slave to prophecy. Karliah is a slave to vengeance and religion. Brynjolf is a slave to duty. Mercer is the only one saying no. He is the only one saying, I choose me. It is a selfish, destructive choice, but it is a choice. In a game that often railroads you into being the errand boy for every deity in the phone book, Mercer's refusal to bow is almost refreshing. There is a delicious irony in how the guild views him. They call him a thief, as if it's an insult. "He stole from us," they cry. But isn't that what a master thief does? He stole the unstealable. He robbed the robbers. By the strict definition of their profession, Mercer Frey is the greatest thief who ever lived. He successfully embezzled from the guild for 25 years without getting caught. He stole the skeleton key from the heart of a Daedric temple. He nearly stole the eyes of the Falmer. He out-thieved everyone. If the guild was a meritocracy, they would build a statue of him. But the guild isn't a meritocracy. It's a family, and he betrayed the family. That is his crime, not the theft, but the disloyalty. However, if the family is an abusive cult, is leaving it really a betrayal? Or is it an escape? Mercer's ruthlessness, killing the guardians of the sepulchre willing to kill you, comes from the knowledge that there is no middle ground. You don't submit your 2 weeks' notice to a Daedric prince. You don't retire from the Nightingales with a gold watch. The only way out is death or total dominance. Mercer chose dominance. He chose to wield the key to rewrite the terms of his existence. Even his combat style reflects this rebellion. He doesn't sneak around in the final fight. He confronts you directly. He uses the key to bring the ceiling down. He is done with shadows. He is done with hiding. He wants to burn it all down. If I can't be free, no one will be. It is a tantrum, yes, but a tantrum of cosmic proportions. When you finally strike him down, and his body floats in the rising water, stripped of the key and the eyes, it is a pathetic sight. The rebel was crushed by the system. The house always wins. Nocturnal gets her key back. The guild gets their honour back, and Mercer gets exactly what he feared. Oblivion. Or worse, capture. We are meant to hate him. The music, the dialogue, the framing, it all screams bad guy. But if you strip away the protagonist's bias, Mercer Frey is the story of a man who looked at the empty promise of a dark goddess and decided he'd rather take the golden run. He was a bad man, certainly. He was a murderer and a liar. But in the context of the Thieves Guild's spiritual slavery, he was also the only one awake. As we loot his body, taking the very things he died for, we are just completing the cycle. We are the new enforcers. We are the ones putting the bars back on the cage. Mercer Frey tried to break the game, and the game punished him for it. The ink on the contract is dry, the oath has been sworn, and Mercer Frey is floating face down in a flooded ruin. Now the narrative pushes us toward the final destination, the Twilight Sepulcher. If the Nightingale Hall is the recruitment office, the Sepulcher is the factory floor where the raw materials, your souls, are processed. We are told this is a holy site, a place of reverence and mystery. But as you step through those ancient doors, leaving the daylight of Skyrim behind for good, the atmosphere isn't one of sanctity, it is one of digestion. The Twilight Sepulcher doesn't feel like a temple. It feels like the stomach of a very large, very patient predator. Here, in the damp dark, we finally see the paradise that Gallus Desidenius died for, and that Karliah has spent a lifetime trying to protect. And let me tell you, as far as retirement plans go, this one makes the Nord concept of Sovngarde look like a 5-star resort, and even the bleak grey wastes of the Soul Cairn look somewhat hospitable. Because in the Soul Cairn, at least the ghosts are angry. In the Sepulcher, they are empty. Here is the core in-game fact that should terrify any prospective Nightingale. As you navigate the Pilgrim's Path, a series of lethal tests designed to weed out the unworthy, you're not fighting Draugr or bandits, you're fighting Nightingale Sentinels. These are the spectral remains of former Nightingales, master thieves who swore the same oath you did. And what are they doing? They are mindlessly pacing dark corridors, attacking anything that moves with a feral, programmed aggression. Pause and consider the implications. Karliah speaks of the afterlife in the Evergloam as becoming one with the shadows, a state of grace where you assist the Lady Nocturnal. But the reality standing in front of you, swinging a ghostly blade at your head, suggests something far more horrific. These aren't guardians, they are drones. They have been stripped of their personality, their memories, and their free will. They are essentially automated security turrets made of ectoplasm. Is this the sublime surrender Gallus wrote about? losing your mind to become a nameless NPC in a dungeon. The game mechanics of the Sepulcher reinforce this theme of erasure. One of the trials involves navigating a room filled with shadows that physically hurt you. If you step into the dark, your health drains rapidly. This is a brilliant, if cruel, piece of environmental storytelling. The darkness doesn't comfort you, it consumes you. It eats away at your vitality. It is a direct metaphor for what the Evergloam does to the soul. It strips away the life, the individuality, the warmth, the spark, until only the shadow remains. The Sepulcher is a machine designed to separate the thief from their humanity. This leads us to a disturbing, obscure lore tidbit regarding the nature of the Evergloam itself. In various texts found throughout the Elder Scrolls series, specifically in the Doors of Oblivion, Daedric realms are described as extensions of the prince's will. They are not separate geographies, they are the prince. When a soul enters the Evergloam, it doesn't just live there, it is integrated into Nocturnal. The shadows you see slithering across the walls aren't lighting effects. They are likely the dissolved consciousness of thousands of thieves who came before you. The Sea of Endless Shadow isn't a poetic metaphor, it is a soup of recycled souls. This connects to a grim fan theory known as the battery hypothesis. This theory posits that the luck Nocturnal dispenses to the guild isn't a gift she creates, it is a resource she harvests. Where does this luck come from? It comes from the Nightingales. By pledging their souls to her, the greatest thieves in history essentially plug themselves into a cosmic grid. Their skill, their cunning, and their luck are drained from them in death to power the blessing for the living. The Twilight Sepulcher is a power plant. The Ebonmere is the turbine, and the Nightingales are the coal. It explains why the Sentinels are so hollow. They have been drained dry. Yeah, everything that made them special, their wit, their charm, their ability to improvise, has been siphoned off to keep the skeleton key mechanism functioning, or to provide that nebulous luck to the guild's newest recruits. It is a pyramid scheme of the soul. The old pay for the new until the new die and become the fuel for the next generation. Gallus isn't a hero in this equation, he's just a fresh battery replacing a dead one. Speaking of Gallus, let's look at his manifestation in the final chamber. When you finally return the skeleton key and the Ebonmere is restored, Gallus appears. He glimmers in the dark, standing beside Karliah. He offers kind words. "My watch begins," he says, sounding incredibly zen about the prospect of spending eternity in a damp cave. But look closer. His dialogue is limited. He shows no anger toward Mercer, only a detached pity. He shows no longing for life. He has been lobotomized by the divine. This isn't the Gallus who wrote complex ciphers and planned elaborate heists. This is a recording. The person is gone. Only the function remains. He has accepted his role as a cog in the machine. Karliah weeps, thinking she's reunited with her lover, but she is weeping over a shell. She's in love with a ghost who has forgotten what it means to love, because love requires a self, and Gallus has surrendered his. The environment of the Sepulcher supports this bleak interpretation. It is built on top of a liminal barrier, a thin spot between Mundus, the mortal world, and oblivion. The Ebonmere is a wound in reality. By keeping it open, the guild allows the influence of the Evergloam to leak into Skyrim. We are told this is good. Luck flows out. But what if luck is just the chaotic influence of oblivion destabilizing the orderly laws of probability? Think about what luck actually is in a thief's life. A lock tumbler slipping at the right moment, a guard turning his head at the right second, a torch blowing out. These are minor alterations of reality. Entropy. Chaos. Nocturnal is injecting chaos into the world through the Ebonmere. The Nightingales are the technicians keeping the valve open. They aren't serving the guild, they are serving the degradation of order, and in return for being the agents of chaos, they are subjected to the ultimate order, the stasis of death in service. We must also consider the Pilgrim's Path trials themselves. They are tests of submission, not skill. The first test requires you to stop fighting and let the shadows take you, or rather, the light reveals you so you must stick to the dark. The second requires you to sacrifice material wealth, the offering bowl. The third requires you to navigate the traps. It is a deconstruction of the thief's ego. A thief is defined by their desire to take, to fight, to outsmart. The Sepulcher demands you give, yield, and follow. It breaks the thief to make the Nightingale. Mercer Frey's refusal to enter the sepulchre takes on a new light here. He knew what was waiting for him. He likely saw the sentinels and thought, that is my reward? Shuffling around a corridor for 10,000 years? His terror was justified. The sepulchre is a horror show wrapped in velvet. It is a trap that uses your own vanity against you. You think you are special. You are chosen. Elite. But to Nocturnal, you're just another unit of energy to be consumed. Even the skeleton key's role in this battery system is crucial. The key is the regulator. Without it, the Ebonmere closes and the connection is severed. The luck stops flowing because the harvesting stops. The curse the guild felt wasn't a punishment, it was simply the system running out of juice. When you return the key, you aren't lifting a curse, you are turning the harvesting machine back on. You're reconnecting the pipe so Nocturnal can start drinking again. As you stand before the Ebonmere, watching the portal swirl with that deep, mesmerizing blue-black energy, remember that you're looking at a drain. It swirls counterclockwise, pulling everything down into the dark. Karliah stares into it with reverence, seeing a goddess. But you, the Dragonborn who has seen the inside of Azura's star and walked the plains of Apocrypha, should know better. You're looking at a soul trap the size of a swimming pool. The tragedy is that the guild members believe they are cheating the system. They think that by serving Nocturnal they get an edge over the honest man, but the honest man dies and goes to Aetherius or Sovngarde, retaining his glory and his spirit. The thief, who thinks he is so clever, tricks himself into an eternity of servitude. The house always wins, and in the Twilight Sepulcher the house collects its winnings in the form of your identity. So, when you walk out of that tomb, leaving Gallus behind to fade into the background noise of the universe, you haven't saved him. You've condemned him. You've locked the door and thrown away the key, literally. You have ensured that the machinery of the sepulchre continues to grind up the best thieves of Skyrim, turning their vibrant, chaotic lives into grey static sludge to power a goddess who barely knows they exist. It is the ultimate heist, and for once, the Thieves Guild are the victims. They had their souls stolen right out from under their noses, and they thanked the thief for doing it. We have dissected the spiritual trap of the Twilight Sepulcher and the rebellion of Mercer Frey. Now we arrive at the climax of his desperation, the heist that cost him his life. We find ourselves in the flooded cavern of Erkenthand, staring up at a massive statue of a snow elf, its sockets filled with gems the size of a man's head. These are the eyes of the Falmer. For Mercer, they are not just precious stones, they are the golden parachute he needs to survive the fall he has orchestrated. The symbolism here is so thick you could cut it with a glass dagger. The entire Thieves Guild questline is a story about blindness. The guild is blind to the truth of their curse. Karliah is blinded by her faith. The Nightingales are blinded by the shadows. And here is Mercer Frey, the man who claims to see the truth, trying to pry the eyes out of a god to secure his future. Here is the core in-game fact that drives the final confrontation. The eyes of the Falmer are unique, priceless artifacts. They are the only known remnants of the Snow Elf civilization's artistic peak, left untouched within a Dwemer ruin. Mercer's plan isn't to steal them for the guild, he plans to take them for himself and flee Skyrim. He explicitly tells you, I'm taking the eyes, and you won't stop me. He's prying them loose with the tip of his blade while the cavern literally collapses around him. This is a level of greed that seems suicidal, even for a criminal. The water is rising, the ceiling is groaning, the Dragonborn is charging at him with a weapon drawn. Yet Mercer keeps prying. Why? Is he just that obsessed with wealth? Or is there a more practical, yet terrifying reason for his single-minded focus? This leads us to a prevalent fan theory regarding Mercer's exit strategy. The theory posits that Mercer isn't just greedy, he is terrified. He knows that by betraying Nocturnal and defiling the Twilight Sepulcher, he has put a mark on his soul that spans dimensions. You cannot simply retire from the service of a Daedric prince. You cannot just move to a farm in the Clovian Highlands and hope she forgets about you. To escape a deity, you need resources that go beyond simple gold. You need FU money of a cosmic scale. The eyes of the Falmer represent the kind of wealth that buys magical protection. With that much capital, Mercer could theoretically hire powerful wizards to cloak his soul. He could pay for a total identity reconstruction from the face sculptor in Riften, or perhaps someone even more powerful. He could bribe his way into a pocket dimension. The eyes aren't just retirement funds, they are his bunker. He believes that if he can just get these gems, he can buy his freedom from the inevitable consequences of his actions. His desperation to pry them loose as the water rises is the desperation of a man who knows that drowning is preferable to what Nocturnal has planned for him. There is a tragic obscure lore tidbit hidden in the history of the statue itself. The statue depicts a snow elf, Faelmer, before their corruption. The Faelmer were a proud, magical race who were betrayed by the Dwemer. The Dwemer offered them sanctuary, but the price was a toxic fungus that blinded them, literally and genetically, turning them into the monstrous subterranean creatures we fight today. The statue stands as a silent monument to the last moment the Faelmer could see. By stealing the eyes, Mercer is reenacting the Dwemer's crime. The Dwemer took the Faelmer's sight to enslave them. Mercer is taking the statue's sight to free himself. It is a profound violation of history. He is desecrating the memory of a genocide to facilitate his own getaway. It highlights the absolute depth of his narcissism. To Mercer, the tragedy of an entire race is just an ATM waiting to be smashed open. The irony, of course, is that Mercer is blinding himself to the immediate danger. He's so focused on the gems that he ignores the structural integrity of the room. He ignores the Dragonborn. He ignores the fact that the platform he's standing on is about to become a submarine. This is the greed's blindness mentioned in the section title. He is the sightless master thief. He has the skeleton key, which unlocks potential, but he is using it to tunnel into a dead end. Consider the mechanics of the fight again. Mercer uses the agent of subterfuge power to turn Brynjolf and Karliah against each other. He uses invisibility, but ultimately he dies because he stayed too long. If he had just fled with the skeleton key, he might have survived. He was already invisible. He could have walked right past the Dragonborn and disappeared into the world, but he had to have the eyes. The key wasn't enough. The power wasn't enough. He needed the material wealth. This suggests that deep down, Mercer is a materialist in a spiritual world. He trusts a big diamond more than he trusts magic. He trusts what he can hold in his hand. In the end, Mercer's body is looted. You take the skeleton key, you take the eyes of the Faelmer, the left eye specifically. The other is usually lost or sold to Delvin. The villain is defeated. But look at what happens to the eyes. You, the hero, sell them to Delvin Mallory for a fraction of their worth to restore the guild's glory. Wait, pause. You sell the sacred relics of a lost civilization to a fence in a sewer so he can buy new banners for the tavern? In a way, the Dragonborn completes Mercer's crime. Mercer wanted the eyes for freedom. The guild wants the eyes for furniture. We condemn Mercer for stealing them, yet our first act as the new guildmaster is to liquidate them. It proves Mercer's point. The guild is just a business. He was just the only one honest enough to admit he wanted the profit for himself. The visual of the empty sockets of the statue staring blindly into the rising dark water haunts the conclusion of this arc. The Faelmer were blinded by trust, Mercer was blinded by greed, and the guild is blinded by tradition. The only thing that sees clearly in that room is the water, rising indifferently to swallow them all. Mercer Frey died as he lived, reaching for something he couldn't hold, standing on the precipice of a ruin, convinced he was the smartest man in the room right up until the roof caved in. He never got his escape. He never got his island in the sun. He just got a wet grave in a dark hole, buried with the very treasures that weighed him down. We have spent a great deal of time dissecting the malice of Mercer Frey and the fanaticism of Karliah. But every tyrant needs an enabler, and every fanatic needs a follower. In the tragedy of the Thieves Guild, that role is played by the man with the smooth voice, the charming accent, and the moral backbone of a chocolate eclair, Brynjolf. It is easy to like Brynjolf. He calls you lad or lass. He gives you your first break. He seems to be the only one in the Ratway who isn't actively hostile or clinically depressed. But if we strip away the charisma, we find a man who is arguably more responsible for the guild's decay than Mercer himself. Why? Because Mercer was the disease, but Brynjolf was the immune system that failed to react. He is the second in command who spent 25 years watching his boss dismantle the organisation and did absolutely nothing about it until a stranger walked in and did the job for him. Here is the core in-game fact that defines Brynjolf's character. He consistently refuses to lead. Throughout the questline, even when Mercer's treachery is exposed, Brynjolf deflects all responsibility onto you. When Mercer dies, Brynjolf immediately insists that you become the guildmaster. "I'm not cut out for leadership," he claims. "I'm just a soldier." This is a staggering admission of cowardice from a man who's effectively been running the day-to-day operations for years. He wants the authority to give orders, but he refuses the accountability that comes with the title. Think about the dynamic in the Ragged Flagon. Mercer sat in his office or the vault brooding. Who was actually handing out jobs? Who was recruiting? Who was keeping the peace? Brynjolf. He was the de facto leader, yet he allowed Mercer to skim off the top, isolate the guild, and drive them into poverty. Brynjolf is smart. He's a master con artist. Are we really supposed to believe he didn't notice Mercer's lavish lifestyle? Are we supposed to believe he didn't notice the vault was never opened? This brings us to the willful ignorance aspect. Brynjolf chose not to see. He chose stability over truth. Challenging Mercer would have meant civil war within the guild. It would have meant risking his comfortable position as the lieutenant. So, he put his head in the sand. He adopted the bad luck narrative because it was easier than confronting the psychopath in the corner office. And he is the embodiment of the phrase, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Although calling Brynjolf a good man is a stretch, he's a man who sells fake medicine to the sick after all. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the cut content and dialogue files of the game that hints at a deeper complicity. In some unused lines, other guild members express frustration that Brynjolf protects Mercer from criticism. He acts as Mercer's buffer. When Vex or Delvin complain, Brynjolf shuts them down. Mercer has a plan, he says. Trust the guildmaster. He wasn't just a bystander. He was the enforcer of Mercer's silence. He actively suppressed the very questions that could have saved the guild years ago. This behaviour aligns perfectly with his introduction. Remember the Falmer blood elixir? Then he stands in the town square, looking people in the eye, and lies to them with a smile. He sells them hope in a bottle that he knows is worthless. Why would his management style be any different? He sold the guild members hope. The luck will turn, Mercer knows best, even though he likely knew the bottle was empty. He is a salesman of the status quo. The community discussions often paint Brynjolf as the bro of the questline, the loyal sidekick. But a more critical analysis suggests he is the bureaucrat of crime. He is obsessed with procedure but blind to the outcome. Look at how he handles the Karliah situation. He's ready to kill her on sight because those are the rules. He doesn't ask why did she do it, he just asks where is she. It takes the Dragonborn physically intervening and Karliah drugging him to get him to listen to a single word of defence. His loyalty isn't to justice, it's to the hierarchy. And when the truth finally comes out in Snowvale Sanctum, when he realises he has been played for a fool for 2 decades, he doesn't get angry at himself. He doesn't apologise to the guild for his negligence. He immediately pivots to the next distraction, the Nightingale Oath. He lets Karliah sweep him up in her religious crusade because it gives him a new set of rules to follow. He replaces one master, Mercer, with another, Nocturnal, without missing a beat. He is a man who desperately needs to be told what to do, and this is why he forces the Dragonborn to be guildmaster. He needs a figurehead. He needs someone else to take the heat if things go wrong. By installing you as the leader, he retains his influence without the risk. He can stay in the flagon, drink his mead, and tell the new recruits, I knew the boss when he was a rookie, while you do the actual work of rebuilding the reputation he helped destroy. Consider the comparison to the Grey Fox again. The Grey Fox led from the front. He took the biggest risks. Brynjolf? He sends you to Golden Glow Estate alone. He sends you to the East Empire Company alone. He only joins the fight when the script literally forces him to the hunt for Mercer. He is a manager who sends the intern to defuse the bomb. The villainy of Brynjolf is subtle. It is the villainy of the middle manager who signs off on the toxic dumping because he doesn't want to rock the boat. He watched his family starve and wither in the sewers, blaming a ghost story, rather than asking to see the ledger. He represents the institutional inertia that allows corruption to thrive. Mercer Frey could not have succeeded without Brynjolf's passive collaboration. As you stand in the cistern, watching him polish his daggers and charm the new recruits, realize that he is the ultimate survivor. Mercer is dead. Gallus is dead. Karliah is a ghost priestess. But Brynjolf? Brynjolf is still standing, still smiling, still second in command. He navigated the collapse of his organisation and came out the other side with a promotion and no consequences. He didn't steal the eyes of a god and he didn't sell his soul. Well, he did, but he doesn't seem to mind. He just floated. Brynjolf teaches us a hard lesson about the Ratway. The ones who survive aren't the boldest or the truest. They are the ones who can sell a lie with a straight face, even to themselves. He isn't the knife in the dark, he's the fog that hides it, and in many ways, that makes him just as dangerous. If you walk the streets of Riften or Whiterun or Solitude and you know where to look, you will see the scars of the Thieves Guild etched into the very architecture of Skyrim. We are talking about shadow marks, those small geometric scratches on doorframes and barrels that serve as the silent language of the underworld. To the uninitiated, they are just random graffiti or weathering on the wood. To a thief, they are sentences: loot here, safe house, danger, fence. But if we stop treating shadow marks as just a helpful UI element for the player and start treating them as an in-universe communication network, a terrifying pattern emerges. The shadow marks aren't just directions, they are a historical record of betrayal. And if you read between the lines, or rather, between the scratches, they reveal that the guild wasn't just rotting from the inside, it had been compromised by external forces long before Mercer Frey ever stole the skeleton key. Here is the core in-game fact. The book Shadow Marks, authored by Delvin Mallory, is readily available in the game. It is not a forbidden tome locked in the vault. You can find copies lying around. This means the secret code of the Thieves Guild is effectively open source. Anyone who can read, including the city guard, the Jarls and rival gangs, can learn exactly what those symbols mean. Think about the implications of that. A secret society relies on encryption. If the encryption key is published in a book that sits on a bedside table in Dragon's Reach, the society is naked. The fact that the guild continues to use these marks, despite their code being broken, speaks to a dangerous level of complacency. But it gets worse. If you conduct a forensic audit of the shadow marks across Skyrim, you find massive inconsistencies. You find loot marks on houses that contain nothing but cabbages and ruined books. You find safe marks in areas heavily patrolled by guards who are definitely not on the payroll. You find guild marks on establishments that seem to have no connection to the organisation anymore. This suggests that the shadow mark network has been compromised or hijacked. Someone else is using the frequency. There is a compelling obscure lore tidbit regarding the specific placement of marks in Whiterun. In the chaos of the Civil War, the Battleborn and Greymane feud dominates the city. Yet, if you look at their homes, the shadow marks seem odd. The wealthy, influential homes sometimes lack loot marks, while smaller, less valuable targets are tagged. It implies that the intelligence gathering was either intentionally faulty, or that the marks were placed to mislead novice thieves into getting caught. This leads to a dark realization. The bad luck of the guild might actually be counterintelligence. Imagine you are a new recruit. You see a mark that says, loot. You break in. The house is empty, but the guards are waiting. You get arrested. The guild looks weak. Who benefits? The city guard, the Dark Brotherhood, or perhaps a rival criminal element we rarely see? There is a fan theory that suggests the shadow marks are no longer being maintained by the Thieves Guild at all, but by the authorities or Maven Black-Briar herself. Consider the protected mark, a circle with a triangle. In theory, this means do not touch. This person pays protection money. In practice, in Riften, this mark appears on almost every business owned or squeezed by Maven. It functions less as a do not steal sign for thieves and more as a brand of ownership for Maven. If Maven is the one dictating where the marks go, then the Thieves Guild isn't using a secret language. They're just reading Maven's cattle brands. She has co-opted their communication system to mark her territory. The guild thinks they are tagging the city, but the city is tagging them. It's a subtle reversal of power. The predator thinks it is hunting, but it is actually walking through a zoo, reading the signs that tell it where to eat. Furthermore, look at the danger marks, a triangle. They are often placed in the Ratway or near the guild's own entrances. Why? To warn members or to warn outsiders? If the marks are known to the public, thanks to Delvin's book, a danger mark serves as a keep-out sign for the general population. It turns the guild's secret warning into a public service announcement. Here be thieves. It destroys the element of surprise. It announces their presence to the world, making true stealth impossible. The shadow marks of betrayal also point to a breakdown in the guild's timeline. Many of the marks in Skyrim seem ancient, faded into the wood. They point to a time when the guild was active in every city. But when you visit the local guild hall in other cities, like the Silverblood Inn in Markarth or the Winking Skeever in Solitude, there is no infrastructure. The marks are ghosts of a network that collapsed decades ago. By continuing to rely on this zombie network, the current guild is walking into traps set by their ancestors. They are breaking into houses that were rich 50 years ago, but are poor now. They are trusting safe houses that were compromised during the Great War. It's like trying to navigate a modern city using a map from 1910. You're going to walk into a wall. This environmental storytelling reinforces the idea that Mercer Frey was just the final nail in the coffin. The infrastructure had been rotting for a long time. The fact that Delvin Mallory, the guy who literally wrote the book on the subject, sits in the flagon and does nothing to update the network is damning. He sends you on bedlam and numbers jobs, effectively asking you to remark the territory. He is trying to reboot a server that has been offline for 20 years. But let's go deeper into the external forces. Who else uses symbols? The Dark Brotherhood, the Morag Tong, the Thalmor. In the espionage game of Tamriel, information is currency. If the Thieves Guild's code is broken, then their movements are transparent to these other factions. Notice how the Thalmor operate in Skyrim. They move with impunity. They hunt Talos worshippers. They kidnap citizens. Do they ever clash with the Thieves Guild? Rarely. Why? Perhaps because they can read the shadow marks too. They know exactly which houses are guild protected and which are fair game. The guild thinks they are flying under the radar, but the radar operator has their transponder codes. The shadow marks effectively scream, "We are here!" Please ignore us, to the most dangerous political powers in the province. The ultimate betrayal found in the shadow marks is the betrayal of the thief archetype itself. A thief is supposed to be invisible. Leaving a physical mark on a building is an act of ego. It is saying, "I was here." It is the criminal equivalent of a dog marking a fire hydrant. In the Golden Age, maybe this worked as a warning, but in a time of weakness, it is just evidence. When you walk through Riften, look at the sheer density of marks. The city is covered in them. It's desperate. It looks less like a network of spies and more like a gang tagging its turf because they are afraid of losing it. A strong organisation doesn't need to spray paint its name on the wall. A strong organisation owns the wall, and then there is the empty mark. It is the most tragic symbol in the lexicon. A simple box meaning nothing of value here. It is a mark of failure. We checked, and we wasted our time. In the current state of Skyrim, that mark should theoretically be on the front door of the Ragged Flagon itself. The guild has become an empty mark, a container with nothing inside. So when you see a shadow mark, don't just see a gameplay hint telling you which barrel has a potion in it. See it for what it is, a fossil. It is a remnant of a time when the guild had the power to define the landscape. Now those marks are just scars on the face of Skyrim, reminders of a code that was cracked, a brotherhood that was bought, and a language that is now spoken more fluently by the guards than by the thieves. The real villain isn't just the person who stole the money. It's the person who let the communication lines rust until they became open channels for the enemy. The shadow marks prove that the guild didn't just lose its luck, it lost its mind. It forgot that the first rule of a secret society is to actually keep secrets. By scratching their secrets into the doorframes of every hold in Skyrim, they ensured that their downfall would be public, legible, and inevitable. To truly understand the depth of the tragedy that has befallen the Ratway, we must look south, back across the border into Cyrodiil, and back in time to the fading days of the Third Era. For many of us, our first taste of organised larceny in Tamriel wasn't in the sewers of Riften, but in the waterfront shacks of the Imperial City. There, we met a legend. We met the Grey Fox, and if we place the legacy of the Grey Fox side by side with the reality of Mercer Frey and Karliah, the contrast is stark enough to make a grown Nord cry. Here is the core in-game fact that veterans of Oblivion remember with a bittersweet pang. The Thieves Guild of Cyrodiil was fundamentally a crusade for freedom. Led by the enigmatic Grey Fox, the guild operated under strict moral tenets, the 3 rules. First, never steal from the poor. Second, never kill on the job. Third, don't steal from other guild members. These weren't just guidelines, they were the soul of the organisation. They positioned the thief not as a predator, but as a counterbalance to the greed of the aristocracy. Compare that to Skyrim. In Riften, you are ordered to plant stolen rings on innocent merchants. You're ordered to smash urns to terrorise shopkeepers. You are sent to collect debts from dirt-poor craftsmen like Bursey Honeyhand. The moral compass hasn't just drifted, it has been smashed and thrown into the canal. The Skyrim Guild has become the very thing the Grey Fox fought against, a bully. But the most damning comparison lies in how these two leaders dealt with the divine influence of Nocturnal. The Grey Fox, Count Corvus Umbranox, possessed the grey cowl of Nocturnal. This Daedric artifact carried a curse far more terrifying than bad luck. It erased the wearer from history. Anyone who looked at the Grey Fox saw a stranger. Even his own wife couldn't remember his name once he took the mask off. He was a man deleted from the fabric of reality. So what did he do? Did he build a shrine? Did he weep and pledge his soul to Nocturnal in exchange for forgiveness? No. He pulled off the greatest heist in the history of the universe. He broke into the Imperial Palace, stole an Elder Scroll, the source code of the cosmos, and used its power to shatter the curse of a Daedric prince. He rewrote history to save himself. He looked Nocturnal in the eye and said, "I refuse your rules." He beat the goddess at her own game. Now look at Karliah and the Nightingales. Faced with a much lesser problem, a missing key and some administrative incompetence, their solution is total submission. We must return the key. We must serve the lady. It is a profound regression in human agency. The Grey Fox proved that mortal ingenuity could outwit Daedric whimsy. The Nightingales prove that without a strong will, mortals will revert to being pets. There is an obscure lore tidbit that makes this contrast even sharper. In the years following the Oblivion Crisis, it is implied that the Grey Fox persona continued for a time, but the specific Thieves Guild structure of Cyrodiil disintegrated or changed forms. However, the philosophy of the Grey Fox, of independent thievery, lingered in the cultural memory. In Oblivion, you could sell stolen goods to any fence once you hit a quota. In Skyrim, you're locked into a radiant quest grind, doing fishing jobs and bedlam jobs to slowly unlock fences city by city. The bureaucracy has increased, but the freedom has vanished. The Skyrim Guild feels like a corporate franchise that has lost touch with the founder's vision. This leads to a spirited fan theory that often circulates in lore communities. The Skyrim Thieves Guild is not a legitimate successor to the Cyrodiilic Guild at all, but a bastardized splinter faction. Proponents of this theory point to the lack of the Bal Molagma tradition, the Robin Hood-style quest from Morrowind, and the absence of the Beggar's King network. In Cyrodiil, the beggars were the eyes and ears of the fox. They were protected. In Riften, the beggars are just background noise. If this theory holds, then the organisation we join in Skyrim is essentially a group of muggers squatting in the ruins of a once great institution, wearing the clothes of thieves but lacking the heart. The villain in this section is the loss of audacity. The Grey Fox represented the thief as the ultimate rebel, a figure who could steal from the gods themselves and get away with it. Mercer Frey tried to recapture that energy, but his rebellion was selfish and destructive. He didn't want to break a curse, he just wanted to get paid. And Karliah represents the total surrender of that rebellion. She turns the thief into a priest. Think about the cowl versus the Nightingale armour. The cowl was a tool. It was dangerous, yes, but it was used by the thief to achieve an end. The Nightingale armour is a uniform. It marks you as property. When you wear the cowl, you are the Grey Fox, you're a legend. When you wear the Nightingale armour, you're just one of 3 servants. You're anonymous, but not in the powerful way. You're anonymous because you don't matter. The legacy of the Grey Fox asks a hard question of the Dragonborn. Why are you settling for this? You're a hero with the soul of a dragon. You have the power of the voice. Why are you letting a washed-up fence and a zealous dark elf tell you that you need to be a janitor for a Daedric prince? The Grey Fox would have stolen the skeleton key, kept it, used the Elder Scroll to remove any curse Nocturnal tried to place on him, and then probably stolen her hat again just for the sport of it. The decline from the Imperial City's waterfront to the Riften Ratway is a decline from high fantasy heroism to gritty and depressing realism. We went from stealing history to stealing candlesticks. We went from saving a marriage to poisoning a meadery. The scale has shrunk. The ambition has withered. So, when you see that bust of the Grey Fox on the desk in the cistern, if you collect the litany of larceny items, take a good look at it. That stone face is judging the entire room. He's looking at Mercer and seeing a thug. He's looking at Brynjolf and seeing a coward. And he is looking at you, the Dragonborn, and wondering why you handed over the skeleton key when he would have used it to unlock the sky. The real villain of the Thieves Guild is the mediocrity that settled in when the giants left the room. They forgot that a master thief doesn't beg for luck. A master thief makes their own. The tragedy of the Thieves Guild isn't just about what happened to Gallus, or what Mercer stole, or what Brynjolf failed to do. The final, and perhaps most insulting tragedy is what the guild does to you. By the time you walk into the Ragged Flagon, you're likely an entity of immense power. You are the last Dragonborn. You have the soul of a Dover. You can shout mountains apart. You have likely negotiated peace treaties, assassinated emperors, and perhaps even defeated the World Eater himself. And yet, the moment you step into the Ratway, the narrative grabs you by the collar, drags you down to the level of a common footpad, and forces you into a posture of submission that borders on the absurd. Here is the core in-game fact that perfectly illustrates this indignity: the Radiant Quest grind. After you've defeated Mercer Frey, returned the skeleton key and supposedly saved the soul of the organisation, are you hailed as the supreme leader? Are you given the keys to the city? No. You're told by Delvin and Vex that the guild is still in shambles and that to truly become the guildmaster, you must complete a staggering number of petty crimes in the major holds of Skyrim. We're talking about 5 jobs in Whiterun, 5 in Solitude, 5 in Markarth, 5 in Windhelm. These aren't grand heists. These are burglary jobs where you steal a golden candlestick from a house, or numbers jobs where you forge a ledger. Pause and visualize this. The Dragonborn, wearing armor made from the bones of dragons, wielding a sword enchanted with the souls of Daedra, is crouching in someone's bedroom in Whiterun trying to steal a ruby necklace without waking up the bard. It is a cosmic misuse of resources. It is like using a tactical nuclear weapon to open a walnut. The guild structure refuses to acknowledge your actual status. It treats you like a raw recruit, a boot, regardless of your achievements. You're forced to prove your worth over and over again to people who, quite frankly, couldn't survive 5 minutes in the dungeons you clear before breakfast. This structural trap reveals the true nature of the guild. It is a machine designed to humble the powerful, not empower them. In the Dark Brotherhood, you become the listener, the direct conduit to the Night Mother. In the College of Winterhold, you become the Archmage, admittedly quickly, but the title carries weight. In the Thieves Guild, even when you become Guildmaster, you're essentially just the employee of the month. You don't give orders. You don't set policy. Brynjolf still stands there and calls you lad. Delvin still sits in his chair and gives you jobs. You have risen to the top of the pyramid only to find that the view is exactly the same as it was from the bottom. This leads to a prevalent community debate known as the ludonarrative dissonance of the Dragonborn. Players have long argued that the Thieves Guild questline makes the least sense for a high-level character. Why would a demigod agree to be a debt collector for Maven Black-Briar? Why would the saviour of the world agree to sell their soul to Nocturnal for a set of armour? The narrative forces the Dragonborn to act like an idiot. You are stripped of your agency. You cannot say no to the oath. You cannot say no to returning the key. You cannot say, actually, I'm going to kill Maven and take over Riften myself. The game railroads you into the role of the obedient servant. There is an obscure lore tidbit, or rather, a mechanical reality often overlooked, regarding the tribute chest. Once you become Guildmaster, a chest in the cistern fills with gold and items periodically. This is your cut of the guild's profits. However, if you do the math, the gold generated by the chest is a pittance compared to what you can make by simply enchanting daggers or exploring a single Dwemer ruin. The economic empire you spent hours restoring is, financially speaking, a lemonade stand. The game tries to sell you on the fantasy of being a crime lord, but the mechanics reveal that you are just subsidizing a failing business with your own time. You are the venture capitalist who keeps pouring money into a startup that refuses to turn a profit. The narrative also forces you to validate the corrupt systems we discussed earlier. By completing the city influence quests, you aren't liberating the people. You're cementing the Black-Briars and the Silverbloods' control. In Markarth, you help the Silverbloods squeeze the locals. In Solitude, you help a shady merchant set up shop. You're actively making Skyrim a worse place to live. The hero is weaponized against the populace. The guild doesn't just subjugate you, it makes you an instrument of subjugation. You become the boot on the neck of the common man. Consider the Nightingale title again in this context. We discussed the spiritual slavery, but look at the operational reality. As a Nightingale, you're a guardian. Guardians don't roam, they stand watch. By accepting the title, you're implicitly agreeing to be tied to the sepulchre. While the game mechanics allow you to wander, the lore implications are that you are now anchored. You have gone from being a free agent, the ultimate adventurer, to being a security guard. It is a narrowing of your horizon. Mercer Frey, for all his villainy, understood this trap. He refused to be the guardian. He refused to be the guildmaster in the traditional sense of serving the members. He tried to break the mould. When you kill him and you take his place, you are essentially repairing the mould he tried to smash. You are stepping into the dead man's shoes and saying, yes, these fit perfectly. I love the feeling of the chains. The forced submission is most evident in the dialogue options. You rarely have a choice to be arrogant or dismissive or commanding. You're almost always polite, inquisitive, and eager to please. What do you need me to do? I'll get it done. Consider it handled. You are the ultimate yes man. For a character who can bend will with a shout, this passivity is jarring. It suggests that the guild has a dampening effect on the Dragonborn's ego. The damp, mouldy air of the Ratway seeps into your bones and makes you small. Furthermore, look at the physical space of the guildmaster's desk. It's in the cistern, in the open. It's not a private office. It's not a throne room. It's a desk in a sewer. Even at the height of your power, you're living in wastewater. The game refuses to let you elevate the guild out of the gutter. You can buy banners, you can buy furniture, but you cannot buy a new headquarters. You're trapped in the Ratway physically, just as you are trapped in the service of Nocturnal spiritually. This narrative arc serves as a cautionary tale about institutions. The Thieves Guild, by its nature, cannot tolerate a being as powerful as the Dragonborn unless that being submits to the rules. If the Dragonborn acted like a dragon, taking what they wanted, burning enemies, hoarding wealth without sharing, the guild would crumble. So the guild, and the game script, domesticates you. It breaks you. It teaches you to be a good thief instead of a god. The ultimate irony is that you possess the skeleton key for a brief window. In that window, you are truly free. You have the power to unlock anything, and the narrative screams at you, put it back, it's dangerous, you aren't supposed to have that. The game is terrified of the player having actual agency. Returning the key is the moment you agree to play by the rules again. You agree to go back to lockpicking minigames. You agree to go back to being mortal. As you stand there in your guildmaster armour, which is just a recoloured version of the standard armour by the way, another sign of mediocrity, receiving the polite applause of Brynjolf and Vex, ask yourself, who is really in charge here? You, the one doing all the work? Or the system that keeps you running on a hamster wheel of radiant quests for a few hundred gold coins? The villain is the structure itself. It is a vampire that feeds on your time and your power, giving you nothing back but a title that means nothing outside of a sewer in Riften. You conquered the dragons, you conquered the vampires, you conquered the rebels. But the Thieves Guild conquered you. It turned the Lion of the North into a house cat, purring for a saucer of milk from Maven Black-Briar. And as you prepare to sign off on this saga, remember that the true mark of a master thief isn't what they steal. It's what they refuse to give away. And in the Ratway, you gave away your freedom for a pat on the head. And so, we arrive at the end of the ledger. We have counted the coin, we have inspected the merchandise, and we have identified the thieves, the traitors, and the fools. But in every game of chance, there is one rule that supersedes all others. The house always wins. And in the shadowy game played beneath the streets of Riften, the house is the Daedric Prince Nocturnal. When the water drains from Irkenthand, and the loot is fenced, and the new banners are hung in the ragged flagon, the Dragonborn is encouraged to feel a sense of victory. You have restored the guild. You have honoured the pact. You have put things back the way they were supposed to be. But if we step back and look at the metaphysical scoreboard, it becomes painfully clear that the only entity who actually gained anything of value from this entire bloody affair is the Lady of Shadows herself. Here is the core in-game fact that serves as the final reality check. The rewards for returning the skeleton key are the agents of nocturnal powers, subterfuge, strife, or shadow cloak. On paper, these are gifts. In practice, they are a lease. You can only have one at a time. To change them, you must physically travel back to the Twilight Sepulcher, walk through the gloom, and petition the Ebonmere again. This mechanic ensures that you never truly own the power. You're merely borrowing it. You're kept on a short leash, forced to return to the site of your submission over and over again. It is a brilliant mechanism of control. It forces the guildmaster to remain a pilgrim, Nocturnal doesn't need to manifest an avatar and crush cities to win. She simply waits. She is the Urdra, often cited in obscure lore as one of the oldest and most primal of the Daedric princes. Her sphere is the unknowable, the dark, the void. She is the darkness between the stars. To her, the drama of Mercer Frey and Gallus Desidenius is less than a blink of an eye. It is petty squabbling among ants. She knew the key would come back. Why? Because mortals are predictable. They crave order, even if they call themselves thieves. They crave structure. And eventually they always come seeking a mother figure to tell them everything will be all right. Think about the sheer efficiency of her management style. She lost the skeleton key, a disaster supposedly, but what was the result? The thief who stole it, Mercer, was hunted down and killed by her other servants. The thief who retrieved it, you, was bound to her service for eternity. The organization that protects her temple, the Guild, was purged of its disloyal element and recommitted to her worship. She spent 0 energy, she took 0 risks, she let the mortals police themselves, and in the process she secured a fresh generation of guardians for her tomb. That isn't just luck, that is total dominance. The villainy of Nocturnal is her indifference. When you speak to her aspect at the Ebomere, she doesn't thank you. She speaks in riddles. She treats you with a cool, distant amusement. She explicitly tells you that your service is expected, not appreciated. She is the cold universe staring back at you. By returning the key, you have affirmed that the natural order is for Daedra to rule and mortals to serve. You have accepted that the highest aspiration of a master thief is to become a supernatural janitor. Let's look at the state of the restored guild one last time. Are they free? No. They are still beholden to Maven Black-Briar for their political cover. They are still beholden to Nocturnal for their luck. They are still hiding in a sewer. The only difference is that now they have a leader, you, who is too busy saving the world to actually lead, and a second in command, Brynjolf, who is too scared to lead. The structural rot hasn't been fixed. It has just been painted over. The Guild is a zombie, reanimated by the skeleton key, moving through the motions of life but lacking the independent spirit that once defined it. Community debates often revolve around whether the Dragonborn should have just destroyed the Guild entirely. There is an argument that Mjol the Lioness is the true moral centre of Riften, and that by helping the Guild you are actively preserving a cancer. By saving the Guild, you ensure that corruption continues to flow through the rift for another generation. Nocturnal benefits from this corruption. As the Prince of Night, she thrives where things are hidden. A city run by a transparent, honest government has no shadows for her to hide in. A city run by the Black-Briars and the Thieves Guild is a playground for her influence. Therefore, the restoration of the Guild is actually a victory for the entropy and darkness she represents. Mercer Frey, in his final moments, realised the futility of it all. He tried to break the cycle. He tried to cash out. But the house doesn't let you cash out when you're winning, and it certainly doesn't let you leave with the dealer's chips. Mercer was the anomaly that the system had to correct, and you, the Dragonborn, were the antibody sent by the system to kill the virus. You weren't the hero of this story. You were the immune response of a Daedric prince. The skeleton key sits once again in the Ebonmere. The lock is sealed. The potential for mortals to unlock their own divinity is locked away. The status quo is preserved. The rich get richer, Maven. The poor get poorer, the citizens of Riften, and the thieves continue to steal scraps from the table, convinced they are kings of the underworld because they have a fancy suit of armour. It is a tragedy of wasted potential. The Guild had the tools to be a force for change. They had the Grey Fox's legacy. They had the skeleton key. They had the Dragonborn. They could have overthrown the Jarls. They could have challenged the Thalmor. They could have rewritten the laws of Skyrim. Instead, they chose to go back to sleep. They chose the comfortable darkness of the sepulchre over the blinding light of freedom. And that is why Nocturnal wins. She doesn't need to conquer Tamriel. She just needs to ensure that no one else wakes up. She keeps the dream going. The dream that luck is magic, that servitude is honour, and that staying in the shadows is better than standing in the sun. She owns the casino, and as long as everyone keeps playing by her rules, she will never lose a cent. So, the next time you're in the Ratway, listening to the drip of the water and the low hum of conversation in the flagon, remember that you are standing in a monument to submission. You're standing in the one place in Skyrim where the Dragonborn knelt. The real villain of the Thieves Guild wasn't Mercer Frey with his greed, or Maven with her politics, or even Gallus with his cult. The villain was the belief that we need permission to be great. The villain was the shadow we cast and the prince who convinced us that the shadow was more important than the person casting it. The key is returned. The door is closed. The story ends exactly where it began, in the dark. And so, we leave the damp stones of Riften behind us. We leave the political manoeuvring of Maven Black-Briar, the quiet desperation of the Ratway, and the cold, indifferent gaze of the Twilight Sepulcher. We let the water rise in Erkenthand, and burying the secrets of the Falmer and the ambition of Mercer Frey in the deep, silent dark. It is time to step away from the shadows. Imagine yourself walking out of the sewers, climbing the wooden steps to the surface. The air is crisp and cool, the scent of the lake, the pine trees, and the faint smoke of a hearth fire replacing the stale dust of the tomb. The autumn leaves of the rift drift slowly to the ground, golden and red, settling on the cobblestones like a soft blanket. You're no longer bound by oaths or contracts. You're no longer responsible for the fate of a guild or the whims of a Daedric prince. You are just a traveller, finding a quiet spot to rest. The sky above is vast, filled with the constellations that tell stories much older and kinder than the ones we have discussed tonight. Massa and Secunda hang low and bright, silver lanterns guiding you towards sleep. Let the tension in your shoulders dissolve. Let the weight of the armour, the weapons and the gold fall away. The heists are over. The guards have gone home. The locks are all open, and there is nothing left to steal because you already have everything you need right here in the quiet. The world of Skyrim continues to turn, its wars and its worries fading into a distant murmur, unable to reach you now. Close your eyes. Listen to the wind rustling through the birch trees. Breathe in the peace of the night. You are safe, you are free, and the shadows are just shadows. Nothing more. Sweet dreams.